I'm really impressed with the Kings. I think it's good for hockey, if Southern California, and now that I'm a little biased because I live here in SoCal, Jack, so I'm a little biased, but I want both those teams in the postseason. I think it's good for the NHL to have that part of the country covered in the postseason with those big time games. But I'm really impressed.
What's up, Kings fans? Welcome back to another episode of Tradin Jabs. Joining me is a very special guest, the all-time leader in hosted sports centers, current NHL broadcaster for ESPN and ESPN Plus, and longtime hockey connoisseur, Linda Cohn. Linda, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Jack, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, again, you're someone that I grew up watching and obviously grew up loving and seeing on TV, and especially for someone that's involved with the hockey world. It's great to have you on. But, you've seen hockey come to ESPN. You've seen it leave, unfortunately, and now you've seen it come back. How great is it for both the sport and the company to be working together again?
Well, when the news happened, we always had hope. There are several diehards in the company, and I think we all know who they are. And I was one of them, and I kept the light on. I kept feeding the positivity. It happened. We got it back. What is it like? It's fantastic because for so many reasons, not only for the people that were there back in the day when we had hockey, the fact that, we're noticing that more and more people are coming out of the woodwork that were closet hockey fans. And then once ESPN got hockey, they're like, oh, they're coming out of the surface, they're coming to the top of the water and saying, oh, this is cool. And what I like about it is an opportunity to show the game in different ways, bring out the personalities, bring out the human interest stories, which is what is big, as you know, Jack, and what we're trying to do. It's not just the X's and O's, and it's a work in progress. Nothing's perfect. We've only been through half a year so far with ESPN and TNT, which is exciting that they're on board as well. But we're getting there. Give us time. But selfishly, I love it. I'm getting opportunities, Jack, I never thought I would get. Reporting from in between the benches. At this stage in my career, I never thought I would have that opportunity. I have that opportunity now. I host a podcast with Emily Kaplan called In the Crease. I never thought I'd have that opportunity. That's the only NHL podcast on ESPN. So that's kind of very cool. And so, like I told you earlier, and like I'm sure you've gotten messages like this before, you just have to keep moving, keep pushing, and just kind of like, there's always more opportunities around the corner, but you have to you have to move forward. You have to see what's there. So thanks to ESPN. And anyway, that's what it's been like. And it's been nonstop. And I kind of love that, keeps me young.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you lead me right into the kind of the next thing I wanted to bring up, and that's you between the benches. For you, you played hockey, you played college hockey, you played, as a goalie. What value do you feel being between the benches brings to a broadcast?
Well, I think the number one value is the fact that you're the eyes and ears down there, right? One of my producers used a great analogy and said, make believe you're the nosy neighbor. So for instance, right?
It's a perfect analogy. Yeah.
Right, Jack? You know, Jack.
Oh yeah.
And you just like putting your nose where you don't belong and try to eavesdrop on what the conversation is, what they're saying. Also, it's just, the game is so fast. It's so wonderful. I don't have to tell you, and so hard hitting. And it's just so right there in your face. And don't get me wrong. Listen, as you mentioned, I played goals, so I still have the good eye-hand coordination, which is a great thing. But you really have to be alert there, and you always have to know where the puck is. Like a goalie, follow the puck. I continue to do that even if I'm in between the benches.
Well, in terms of the Kings, when we first started going back and forth about setting this up, it was right around the Kings-Rangers game that was just over a week ago. You obviously went as a fan. You're a Rangers fan. You're obviously from the New York area. Unfortunately for you, the Kings won and did so in impressive fashion. Having seen the Kings in person, what are your takeaways from the team right now?
Yeah, and I grew up a Rangers fan, and I'm not a fraud. I stay loyal to my teams, but I obviously becoming a national reporter all these decades, I've learned to love other teams and other players and what they have achieved. But I would be a hypocrite if I didn't say I grew up a Rangers fan. You don't just suddenly jump off the wagon. Anyone that does are not real fans. Okay, let me just make that clear, Jack.
Hey,
They're not real fans.
I could not agree more.
All right, good. We're on the same page on that as well. I saw the Kings. I was in between the benches for one of their games earlier in the year at formerly known as Staples Center, crypto.com. I like to call it the Crypt. And that's when I had sat down with guys like Adrian Kempe, Anze Kopitar, had a conversation with Alex Iafallo, and it was that game. He had a great game. He was number one star, and he spoke about what they learned from the year ago and how they stuck together and they bonded. And I know that sounds cliche, but a lot of us thought the head coach, Todd McClellan, his message wasn't getting across. And now we see I know it's only halfway through the season. We got 40, 35 games to go, whatever it is. They figured out the system. They're really looking good. That game against the Rangers was a close to perfect game. I mean, Cal Peterson made big stops when he had to. It wasn't like he had a lot of saves. He made the timely saves, and that just gave the team confidence. They're getting great goaltending. I don't have to tell you about Quickie. He's like reborn. He's doing fantastic. And the captain, Kopi's doing, and it just goes on and on and on and on. And as we speak now, I mean, they're not only in playoff position, they're in third place in the Pacific Division, which all of us are blown away how competitive the Pacific Division is. And everyone was assuming that teams like the Kings and the Ducks were not going to make the playoffs, and they were still taking baby steps, and right there neck and neck as we speak, at this moment. So I'm really impressed with the Kings. I think it's good for hockey, if Southern California. And now that I'm a little biased because I live here in SoCal, Jack, so I'm a little biased, but I want both those teams in the postseason. I think it's good for the NHL to have that part of the country covered when in the postseason with those big time games. But I'm really impressed.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the growth that ESPN can have for the NHL, and I think that goes hand in hand with SoCal in hockey as well. We've seen the emergence of the value of having teams be successful in Southern California and what it's done for youth hockey in the last 15 years with the success of those two teams. But you talk about Alex Iafallo, you talk about Adrian Kempe just a minute ago. The depth of the Kings has slowly gotten bigger and better, and all of a sudden those guys are really producing. For a guy like Adrian Kempe, who just made his first All-Star game, which I believe is February 5th on ABC and ESPN networks. Right. You will be covering that.
Yes.
Great. Your conversation with Adrian, how have you seen him develop and grow over the last few years, and now as he leads the Kings in goals, has really blossomed in the last 25, 30 games?
Yeah, I had a great conversation with him. He was telling me how he didn't like the fact that he was a streaky player. He was looking for more consistency heading into this season. And he worked extra hard in the off season to find a way to do that with reps, working on everything that would make him a better hockey player. We all forget how young he is. We all forget how young he was when he broke into the league and became a part of the Kings, and so much pressure on this kid. And I know that's part of, you know what this is like. Jack, it's just so much pressure on these young guys, first round picks, even some that aren't first round picks. It's just so much pressure, more than there ever was when you're picked that high. And you expect to perform and get results right away. And those results never came, and fans were getting on him. And you know that, Jack. I mean, people are like, hey, we expect more from Adrian. And so it was nice to see him blossom. And it's nice to see him get rewarded, because with an all-star game appearance coming up, because we see so many guys that have been left off this all-star game roster, which is kind of head shaking. I know it has a lot to do with this 3-on-3 format, which I think they should go back to a normal all-star game type so we can get the real
all
stars.
The deserving players.
Right. The deserving players and the stars, it's crazy. People are having off the charts seasons this year, and they should be all-stars because they are all-stars this year. And isn't that what it's about this year? And that's not the case, but I'm happy for Adrian Kempe. Yeah,
I mean, it's interesting you bring up the pressure aspect, because, he came into the NHL at a time where, he was one of the only top draft picks, given the way that the Kings had traded around those picks in the All-Star or the Stanley Cup run. So yeah, a lot of pressure for him, but absolutely good for him. You mentioned earlier the importance and the value of Jonathan Quick and Cal Peterson. Peterson has been at peak form since returning to the lineup, and obviously we've seen what Quickie has done, playing like his Jennings Trophy in 2012 and 14 self right now, throughout the whole year. How important do you think in today's game it is to have two goalies that can play any given night and be that number one goalie?
Yeah, even before we've had this COVID chaos, I thought that was huge to have. I thought because the game was changing, it's a harder game to play. It's tough for a goaltender to play 3 games in 4 nights or 4 games in 6 nights. You needed an A minus, right? I hate to put a minus to it, but you didn't want an A goalie and a B plus. It's really true. And we now, us media types, right? We talk about terrific goalie tandems in and around the league and how important that is. And I know one guy can get hot in the postseason, you go with that guy, but it's really good for a head coach to have that safety net. I just love that. The season that Jonathan Quick is having, to me, is I love these kind of seasons. Do you know why, Jack? Because everyone counted him out. Everyone thought he was going to be traded, and even if Rob Blake was taking calls in the offseason, it may not have been a lot of calls. Because what he was, the injuries, the not consistency, not the Quick we know, and he lit a fire under himself to be better. And he's done just that. And you're right. It reminds Kings fans of the good old days, the glory days, the cup winning days with the play that he had, because as we know, without him, they never would have won those 2 cups. So it's good to see. And I think that goes a long way in the dressing room, that his teammates, guys like, Doughty and Kopitar know that, that's Quickie. He's a competitor. And he will never admit it, but he heard the noise in the off season, and he's responded beautifully.
Yeah, you look at Quickie, and Todd has been very vocal about how he's so happy that both Quickie and Cal have pushed themselves and pushed each other to be better. And you mentioned Quickie in the off season, the whispers of the injuries and not what he once was, and obviously he's proven everyone wrong with statistics that I believe are, as of right now, better than he's ever done in a season. But you look at goalies, and speaking of the goaltenders, I think for anyone who is a fan or watched SportsCenter growing up, and obviously to this day knows that your best commercials are always been those. This is SportsCenter, and for you, Henrik Lundqvist was one that you did one with. Obviously, as a Rangers fan, that's got to be quite awesome. This is SportsCenter. You did it with the King, along with the Swedish chef.
Yes.
For anyone who hasn't seen that, explain what that commercial was about and what it was like being able to film one with the King.
Yeah, there's so many things there. Back in the day, because I was in SportsCenter for so long, I had just started out. It was a couple of years. I started out there in 1992, believe it or not. Rangers won the Cup in 94. And then the following year after that Cup, they booked Mike Richter to do This is SportsCenter commercial, of course, from the Stanley Cup winning 1994 Rangers team, which I never thought I would see in my lifetime. But thanks to Richter, Brant Leach, and Mark Messier, and a few other great guys like Adam Graves, it happened. And of course, Stefan Matteau. So, but anyway, I was able to do 2 commercials with Mike Richter. So that, of course, blew my mind, especially, hey, new to ESPN. This is great. Oh my God, this is amazing. I could walk away now and I'm fine. Okay. I've succeeded. But then, later on, and then also, I covered the Rangers a lot. I was pre and post radio host for several years during Lundqvist's great run with the Rangers. And yes, that run in 2014 and that very heartbreaking loss in 5 to your LA Kings. I'm over it. It's okay. But I was very sad, and I had to talk therapy in the radio post game to many Ranger fans. So before they jumped off the ledge. that Swedish Chef commercial, anyone can YouTube it. It's just funny because we all know Henrik Lundqvist is from Sweden, and we all know the Swedish Chef, the Muppets, and it was just a fun bit. No, the guys that write those This Is Sports Center commercials are so great. There's just too many great ones to list, but yeah, it was great. The funny story about that Henrik Lundqvist one. So he just knew he was going to be in a This Is Sports Center commercial, right, on ESPN. So all these athletes that come and are picked and selected, and they do this with their own time, donate the money to charity, that kind of thing. Oh, and Lundqvist came with a whole maybe it must have been 6 different suits. He brought them with him, and nobody told him, "Hey, Hank, would you mind? We'd rather just have you in your New York Rangers goalie equipment uniform when you shoot these commercials. I'm so sorry." And it was so sad. He's like, "Oh, okay." But, because he's so he's the best dressed ever.
Yeah.
He was disappointed, because he's always GQ. So those beautiful suits were still hanging in the closet. He had to bring them back. But it was just a little funny side note. But he can laugh about that now.
That's hilarious. The last thing I wanted to bring up, Linda, and it's something that I'm sure you're very proud of, but the impact that you've had on the growth and the ability to show that women in sports are not only there to stay, but are extremely impactful has to be awesome. You've been such a trailblazer. How important has that been to you throughout your career?
Yeah, that's huge for me. As I get older, I even appreciate it more because, when you're in a career and you're just plugging along and I'm pushing for the next opportunity, it's hard not to just think of yourself and the opportunities you do or do not get. And then once you get an opportunity that you want to shine and get more opportunities, it's just like a treadmill, you just want to keep going. But over the years, over the decades, when I've seen these fabulously talented women that have come up through the ranks, and kudos to ESPN for giving those women opportunities, by the way. They've been in the forefront of that over the years and years, and it does mean something. It means a lot. The other thing that I'm very proud of, probably even more so, is the fact that I was able to have this great career and also be a mom, raising 2 amazing kids. They're now grown. My daughter Sammy is 30, my son Dan is 26, and they're great kids. And to do that and to have this challenging job where, back in the day, Jack, it wasn't like it is now for women. Women were not given opportunities. I always felt I had to constantly fight and prove. And also, even when I felt and others felt I did a perfect job, it was not enough. And I'm not complaining about that. I'm just saying I'm happy. That's the other answer to your question, that those kind of things don't happen as much anymore, where there is a even stage where women can prove whatever the vocation is, whatever the job, whatever the opportunity is, whatever the story, they can prove that they can do it just as well. And there's a competition. Before, they weren't even invited to the competition. Now there's competition. So that's another part of it that is really good to see.
Linda, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on. You've obviously had an impact on many lives, women especially, but for me growing up, seeing you on TV is always something that I'll remember. And being able to talk to you now has been a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining Tradin Jabs.
Anytime, Jack. And like I said, speaking as a mom, I'm so proud of you. Keep doing what you're doing. And there's even more pages to turn in your lifelong journey. And I can't wait to see them. I hope we reconnect later on the season to talk more about those LA Kings.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Linda.
You got it, Jack.